Hello, sweet friends. So I have chapter 13 from Karen Cushman's The Midwife's Apprentice, and chapter 13 is titled Visitors. Here we go. Jeanette was well content with Alice. The girl didn't steal food, sneak ale, or dally with the guests. She was strong, willing, undemanding, and she had enough common sense to do what she was bid and ask no questions. So Alice laid fires and swept floors and carried water all that spring. She was learning also to overyeast the bread and weight the mugs, so that much of what she served was merely iron. She stirred who knows what poor wild thing into the stew and called it beef or rabbit. When important-looking guests arrived and Jeanette called to Alice in a loud voice to put clean sheets on the big bed, Alice knew she was to do no such thing. But the important-looking guests overheard and were comforted by the thought. "Thundering toads," Jeanette would say. "I am but a poor woman with this wretched inn and a blind man to care for. I'm sure God does not begrudge me my little economies." So in other words, she's trying to justify like pulling the wool over the eyes of some of the patrons to the inn by saying things like, "Hey, Alice, make sure to go put all that like fancy bedding on the beds." And that wasn't actually the case. She just wanted the guests to think that Alice was actually doing that. The same thing when we heard about the stew. She said they would stir who knows what wild animal into the stew, but they would tell the people eating it that it was beef or rabbit. So some of you are probably thinking, well, that sounds a little dishonest, and well, you'd be right. Yeah. And she got by with it because she was so round and rosy and merry, and with it all so fair, and that she treated everyone the same. So they're saying she's fair in how she cheats people because she kind of cheats all of them. As spring burst into May and the trees were all flowers and Magister Reese decided to stay for one more season, there came to the inn a comely young man who acted so lordly, Alice thought he must be a knight or a mayor, but proved to be the carpenter's assistant from the manor. She watched and listened to him, and finally, while serving his mutton pie, was bold enough to ask, "The boy Edward," remember Edward, "who arrived at the manor for the threshing, do you know him? How does he fare?" "Never heard of him. A little boy near 7, although small and puny for his age. Never seen him. Mayhap he ran off or died or got eaten by a goat." The carpenter's assistant grinned at this with mutton stuck between his lordly white teeth. Alice's heart thumped. Was she too stupid then even to have helped Edward? Was he not safe at the manor as she thought, but somewhere unknown and unsafe and unfit? Or did the lordly young man just not bother to notice small boys? Then on a day so like summer that the apple trees were tricked into fruit, there came another visitor. Alice had just finished watering the beer and was kneading sawdust into the pie crust when she heard the rumble of a cart on the inn path. A load of wood had come for the kitchen, and walking behind the wagon was the red-headed boy from the village, Will Russet. Alice forgot for a moment that she was no longer the midwife's apprentice, but now a failure, and wiping her floury hands on her skirt, ran outside. Will Russet, it's me, Alice." "Alice?" he called. He was wondering, we was wondering where you'd got to, and were you all right, but what be you doing here?" The sunshine faded from Alice's face, skinning rabbits and sweeping floors and mucking out the privy. "I'm the inn girl." "And a prettier inn girl the world never saw," said Will. "Or you would be if you ever got that flour and dirt off your face. Come talk to me while I unload the cart." Alice spat on her fingers and rubbed her face, but succeeded only in making both face and hands equally dirty. So she gave it up and followed Will to the woodpile, where she sat and listened to his news of the village. Alice Little was fat and bonny and had 3 teeth. The baker's wife kept her husband tied on a short rein to his ovens. Grommet Smith had married Alden Figtree, under steward at the manor, a timid little man who called her Mistress Figtree, my dear, and stayed mostly out of her way for fear of being swatted like a fly. "How you be, Alice?" Will asked when he had run out of gossip. "Why did you run?" Alice thought of what she might say. "That village did not suit me," or "The midwife was stingy and greedy and harsh," or "I found I did not care for babies." But when her mouth opened, out came the story of her failure with Emma Blunt and how she discovered she was too stupid to be the midwife's apprentice. "Bah, Alice, I seen you with Tansy. You got guts and common sense. Just because you don't know everything don't mean you know nothing. You guys, that is so important to remember. Just because you don't know everything, that doesn't mean that you don't know anything, right? You don't have to know everything all the time. That's the whole part of growing up and getting older and learning. And here's another secret. You never stop learning. It doesn't matter how old you get. I'm still learning about things every single day. So if you ever get frustrated because you feel like you don't know everything or you don't know a lot about a lot of things, relax. You're not supposed to know absolutely everything. That's impossible, okay? And so that's kind of what Will Russet is trying to tell Alice, like, come on, girl, stop being so hard on yourself. Even Jane Midwife herself don't know everything, though she thinks she does, Will said, winking at her with an eye as green as new grass and as friendly as the summer sky. Suddenly shy, Alice ran back into the inn and the visit was over, though she remembered it again and again during the weeks that followed. So it sounds like they're getting along. Remember, towards the beginning of the book, they weren't so friendly. But after she helped save him a couple chapters back, they kind of developed this friendship, you know? So, before the month was out, another familiar face showed at the inn. One day when Alice returned from gathering wood sorrel to make a sauce, there at the table was Jane Sharp, the midwife herself, in her starched wimple and second-best gown, deep in earnest conversation with Magister Reese. Alice's face grew hot and then as cold as bare feet in January. Ooh, what a good simile. Her throat tickled and her eyes stung as she imagined the midwife telling Magister Reese of the girl's stupidity, her incompetence, and her failure. Run away, she said to herself, run away. But her shame was less than her curiosity, that and her desire not to leave Magister Reese hearing only the worst of her. So she's assuming that the midwife is talking to Magister Reese about her, Alice, and about how stupid and how much of a failure she is. So she stayed, hiding in the shadows of the room to listen without being seen. Jeanette pinched her and thrust a jug into her hand, so she began to move toward the table as slowly and silently as she could until she was close enough to hear. And I brewed her some of my sage tea, unequaled for a woman likely to miscarry due in the slipperiness of her womb. Jane Sharp was not then talking of Alice, but of herself. Alice should have known. And the Magister Reese was writing it all down in his great encyclopedia, while the cat nibbled his cheese and bread. Jane continued, I myself use a tea of black alderbark and smut rye to stop excessive bleeding, but I have heard that rubies, either worn on the body or ground to a powder and taken in warm wine, do even better. If the woman is lucky enough to own rubies and rich enough to let them be ground into... Well, she never even noticed Alice as the girl refilled her mug. Alice returned to the shadows. Will Russet, she heard the midwife say to the Magister Reese, a boy from the village tells me my apprentice is here at the inn. My former apprentice, might I say, for she ran away. You seen her here? Skinny girl with black curls and big sad eyes, afraid to say boo. Before Magister Reese could say nay or yea, the midwife went on. She was not as stupid as some I have had, and better company, but still perhaps her going was for the best. She was not what I needed. Ooh, I don't know if Alice probably liked hearing that. Because I failed, whispered Alice in the shadows. Because she gave up, continued the midwife. I need an apprentice who can do what I tell her, take what I give her, who can try and risk and fail and try again and not give up. Babies don't stop their borning because the midwife gives up. She landed her sharp glance on Magister Reese for a moment, drank off her ale in one long swig, and was gone. So as stubborn and stingy and rude and difficult to be around as Jane the midwife is, Alice just overheard her telling Magister Reese, you know, she was not what I needed, not because she failed, which is what Alice thinks, but because she gave up. She isn't Alice. The midwife feels that Alice gave up because she just ran away. And the midwife is saying, I can't have someone working for me who gives up. Babies who are trying to be born don't give up, as the midwives try to pull them out into the world. So she's saying that's what she needs from a midwife's apprentice. She needs someone who's not going to give up, who can try and who can risk and who can fail. And after they fail, they can try again instead of running away. So that was chapter 13, my friends. I hope you enjoyed. Chapter 14, 15, 16, 17 will be following. Remember, chapters 14 through 17 are this week. And oh my gosh, that will be the end of the book. Chapter 17 is the final chapter. So I hope you enjoyed this. Bye.